Hi, it's Jordan1, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make my new M&M Minis. So I had done a larger M&M several months ago, and I had gotten a bunch of requests to make a smaller version, so I finally got around to doing that, so this is what I created. So I think they turned out really cute. You can do really any different color, and they all have their own little facial expressions. I tried to make them similar to the actual characters, whereas the orange guy sort of has like a frightened look, and the red guy sort of has like a sideways, sort of a smug look on his face. And for the girl, she does have a dark green lip color instead of the black, but when I put it against this green, I didn't think it stood out. It wasn't that big of a difference. So I decided to go with the black just so it would show up a little bit better on the camera. And another small difference with her is that I did do a row of white here at the base of the leg just because she wears boots and they have sneakers on. So you can also see I have different eyes here. These are the eyes that I bought, these wiggle eyes that came with eyelashes. So they're good for the girls, but then I did not want the eyelashes for the red M&M, so I used some red nail polish, and I did a couple of coats. It looks like I can probably do another coat or two because I can still see a little bit of the black eyelashes through. But you can do that. For the orange guy here, he just had regular wiggle eyes. He didn't have any color associated with his. And then if you don't have access to any of those, you can make your own eyes out of rubber bands. You can see I did that for the blue guy, and I will be showing that in the tutorial. So the actual M&M that I'll be showing you on the tutorial today is going to be the red one. To make your M&M minis, you're going to need a hook of some sort. So I'm going to be using the Rainbow Loom metal hook, but you can use a crochet hook or whatever you have available. I'm going to be using a twist tie to help me make the magic rings, and that is optional, but I find it's a little bit easier to do. And you'll need stuffing of some sort. I'm going to be using polyfil. You'll need several clips or stitch markers. For my eyes, I'm going to be using wiggly eyes. So this is just a sample. The ones I have on my M&M actually have the red. And of course, as I said earlier, if you don't have wiggle eyes, you can just use rubber bands to make those. And then for your band counts, you're going to need 232 red, or whatever you want your main M&M color to be, and then 56 white, 8 black, and 40 skin tone. So my counts here do not include bands that you would need if you're using rubber bands to make the eyes. For that, you would need about an additional 18 bands. We're going to begin by making a magic ring of 5. So for this, you'll need 6 rubber bands, and I will be using a twist tie. I do find it a little bit easier to start your magic ring by using this, but it is optional. And then you'll need a stitch marker of some sort, so I'm going to be using a clip. So if you do have that twist tie, you just want to place it right next to your hook, and then you're going to triple your first band. And if you don't have the twist tie, just do this right on your hook. So I'm just placing it on, twisting, putting it back on, twist, and put it back on again. So you'll have 3 loops on your hook. I'm just going to bend this in half, and this is just going to give me something to grab onto and keep those 3 loops together. I'm going to pull through my first band, get the other end back on my hook, and then one pulls through the other. And then from the front, you're going back through those 3 loops. You're going to pull through your second band, get the other end back on your hook. So from now on, you're going to have the 3 loops, and the one on the end will pull through the other 2. So again, from front to back, I'm going to just pull this next band through, and then I have 2 more here. And here's my last one. Whoops, didn't quite grab it there. And through. So now I'm going to remove my twist tie, I'm going to take my clip and just put it on the band that's around my hook. And then you just want to take a second and sort of even these out. In row 2, you'll need 10 rubber bands, and we're doing an increase in every stitch. So here's our magic ring, and what I'm calling a stitch is, if you hold this up and you look on the outer edge, it's this little sideways V, and there's 2 loops. Again, I'm always going from front to back, and you're just going to slide your hook under those 2 loops. I'm going to do my first single crochet, and then back through that same loop for my second band, so that is what's considered an increase. Then you're moving over to your next stitch on the left here, doing 1, and then through that same one for a second, and we'll just continue that pattern until we make it all the way around here. So that's 1, 2, and then 2 for the next, 1, 2, and then you should have 2 bands left here, and you should have 1 stitch. You can tell it's where your clip is. So there's 1 and 2. Just going to move my stitch marker. In row 3, you'll need 15 bands, and we're doing an increase in every other stitch. So we're starting with an increase. So that's 1, and then back through that same stitch for a second. And then in that next one, we're just doing a single. And then an increase. And a single. And then so on. I'm not going to keep repeating that. So really this shape of the M&M is really pretty basic. We're just building our circle. So I have 3 stitches left here. Let me just slide these over. And then on our very last one here, we're ending on a single. In row 4, we're still doing increases, and we're going to do that every 3 stitches. So the pattern is 2 1 1 2 1 1 repeating. So I'm going to start my first stitch here with an increase. And some people like to do their increases to start, and some people like to do their increases in that last stitch of the pattern. I don't know, for me I just have found that I like to do it at the beginning. But I guess it doesn't really make a difference either way. So now the next one's an increase. And then 2 singles. So I think the nice thing about this mini M&M is you don't really need a whole lot of bands to do it. I know some of my other creations took pretty many bands, and they can definitely be time consuming. So that's why I wanted to create this smaller version. And now I'm doing my 2 singles. And then I have 1 set of this pattern left here with 3 stitches. So I have my increase, and then 2. In row 5, you'll need 25 bands, and this is our last row of increases. So you're going to be increasing every 4 stitches. So I'm doing a pattern of 2, 1, 1, 1, repeating. So this is as large as this little M&M is going to get. So that's my increase, and then I have 3 singles. So I think this is a pretty nice size. I decided to stop when I got to 25 just because I didn't want to use too many rubber bands. And I think it turns out to be a good size to sit on your desk, or you could make a little keychain out of it and hang it on a backpack. I think it's a good little knick-knack size. So I have 2 more sets of this pattern left. And then here's my last set of the pattern. So here's my last increase. Whoops, I can see that my hook is through an extra band here that I didn't want it to go through. Usually if you pick up a band other than the ones you're supposed to be going under, you can tell that it just doesn't feel quite right. It just feels too bulky. For row 6, you'll need 25 bands, and you're just going to do 1 single crochet in each stitch. So I am going to let you go ahead and do that on your own, so you can pause the video, and then I'll meet you back here in a minute. Once you've completed 1/2 of your M&M, what you're going to do is go back and make a second half exactly the same way. So just for the sake of time, I'm not going to film this, but I will add the time for you to go back to if you feel like you need to follow along with the instructions again. The next thing I'll show you is how to make the facial features on your M&M. So I have about 8 black bands I'll be using, and then I have 4 white bands that are going to be for the M, and then I have 4 red bands. They're going to be the anchor bands that are going to hold these stitches together inside. So I do like to use whatever color my main body part is for that. And as far as the eyes go, I am going to be using the Google eyes for mine, and I just hot glue those on at the very end, but I know that not everybody has those, so in the next segment I will show you how to make eyes out of rubber bands. So I like to start by making the M. I think that this is the hardest to do. So here is my 1/2, and I'm going to have this part where the clip is, where I had ended that last row, over towards the right here. And I'm going to find the center point here. You can see where your magic ring is in the very middle. So I want the M to be down here below that. And if you look at an actual M&M, they have more of a lowercase m, but for this, since I'm working with such a small section, I found it much easier to just do an uppercase M. It's easier just to do the up, down, up, down. So I'll say I'm going to start probably down here, slightly to the left of center, and I'm going to go towards the bottom here, and I'm going to push out from the inside out to the front. I'm going to take my first white band and pull that through to the back. So you can see here I'm going to leave it on my hook, and then I'm going to see where I want this to come up. So I want it to come diagonally up and to the right. Just make sure that I'm keeping that through there. Push through, get this end on my hook and pull that through to the back. And then one end is going to pull through the other. So sometimes it's a little tricky. It does want to slip off here once in a while, so just take your time. And then I'm going to go back out through that same hole, the top here. Grab my next band, and this one I want to come diagonally down and to the right, so I'm pulling it through to the back. And again, you're leaving this all on your hook here, so you have the 2 loops. And then I'm going to push out through, grab the end, and pull it through to the back. So if you look here on the back, you should have 3 loops. One is going to pull through the other 2. And you can see as you're doing it if you like the way that it's looking. And if not, you can do some adjusting. So then I'm going back out through this bottom hole again. Pull through. And then I'm going to come up diagonally to the right again. Pull through to the back. Again, you have 3, one pulls through the other 2. And then I'm coming out the same hole at the top here, getting my last white. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom, pull it through to the back, and one through the other 2. So you can just take a second and see how you think that looks. Here's my center, going straight down. I think that looks pretty good. And so I'm going to now go through just one of these little loops of red here on the back side. So I have the 2, taking my last anchor band here, pull through both, and then make a really nice and tight slip knot. You don't want that to come apart. And then this loop will just be hidden inside. You won't see that. So you can do some adjusting here if you want to. If your bands got separated at all, you can push them together. But now we have our M. And so once I have that placed, then I'm going to do the mouth next, I think. So again, here's the center, and I want the mouth to be up a little bit above here. Now for the red guy, if you look at pictures of him, he always has sort of like a sideways like smirk on his face. So I'm going to start over here to the left. I'm going to go pretty much to the middle. And again, I'm pushing through from the back. So I'll take my first black band, pull it through, and then while leaving it on my hook, I'm just going to move over here to the right. Pull it through to the back, and one through the other. And then I'm coming back out that same hole. And let's see, I want it to come down and around. I want to give it a little curve here. And I see on the back here, I just lost this, so not a problem. I have the one on. I'm just going to go back through the other 2 loops. As I said, sometimes that does happen. And then I'm going back out through the front here. Just going to work my way around here. And let me see here, I think I'll go one more over. And of course you can do whatever mouth you like. You can do whatever design. You can use as few or as many bands as you like. And then again, I'm just going to go through one red here on the back and tie this off. Make a really nice and tight slip knot. And then what else you can do if you want to is, since you have these loops just hanging, you can tie those together. Now the only thing you have to be really careful about is not to tie them too tightly so that it gathers your creation and like puckers it there. You don't want that to happen. But I am just going to do a very loose knot, and that way it's just going to give it a little bit extra security that it won't come loose over time. Again, just make sure you're not pulling those bands tightly. You want the knot to be tight, but you don't want your creation to pull there. So here he has kind of like a sideways smile. And then the next thing I have to do are the eyebrows. So they're pretty much at the top here. Again, you can do whatever shape you like. I'm going to stick to a pretty much regular shape here. So here's the center. I'm going to go up to the middle, and I'm going to go to the left of that. So I'm just going to pull through my black and then slide over, come up through, and then back up through that same hole, and move over to the next. And then again, I need to tie this off, and you can make them bigger if you want. I found that since it's only a mini M&M, I'm only going to do 2. Tie that off. And sometimes these bands separate. You can just stick them back together. And let me just show you too, if you see here in the middle how you can see this black poking through here, what you want to do is just shift this around a little bit so that you don't see that coming up through. It might be just a matter of sliding this into a different position. And there. And then again, I want to do the opposite side, so I'm coming up to the middle, and I'm going over to the right, go up through here, so there's one, and here's my second. Just make sure I get the loops to go through and tie it off. Now, as promised, I will show you how to make eyes out of the rubber bands. So basically you're just making a magic ring, but you're changing colors. So for this you're going to need 2 black, 2 white, and then 5 of whatever your M&M color is. So of course this is just for one eye, so you'll have to double the amount of bands to make your second eye. So I'm taking a black band, and again I am using a twist tie. This is optional, but it will definitely be easier. I'm going to triple this black. And then what I'm going to do is start with a white. Same way we do a magic ring, it's just pulling through, back on, and one through the other. And then I'm going back through the black. And this time I'm going to switch to black. So since we are switching colors, we'll do a slip stitch. And that just means that you're pulling through everything on your hook, including this white, Get the other end back on, so this time you have just the two blacks and one through the other. And then back through again, we're going to do a white. Again, you're pulling through all since we're changing colors. And then back through, and actually I'm just going to take this twist tie out now that I have a pretty substantial piece to grab onto. And now we're just going to do our 5 red here, or whatever your color is. So again, I'm pulling through all just because I'm changing colors. And then back through for the rest. So this time we don't have to do any slip stitches just because we're keeping the same color for the rest here. So that was my 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So let me just grab a clip here. And then you can play around with it a little bit, even it out. So there is your one eye, and you would just repeat that again to make your second. The next thing I'll show you is how to make the hand and the arm. So for that, you're going to need 9 white bands and 8 of your skin tone bands. So the ones I'm using are the lighter tan color that comes in the Rainbow Loom Camouflage pack. So I'm starting with 3 of the white. I'm taking them all together. I'm going to slide them onto my hook, and I want to triple these. So I'm just twisting and putting them back on, and then I'm twisting and putting them back on again. So I'm doing them all together as one solid piece. So here's what it's going to look like on your hook. And then I'm taking the next 2 white and getting them on the hook, and I want to slide everything that's on my hook onto this. So this part can be a little bit tricky. It helps if you have some fingernails, so you can just pinch those and slide them over. Just make sure that all the bands get over. You should just have 2 left on your hook here. And you'll know if you have all the right ones over because you should be able to freely slide this. And then get the other 2 back on. And I'm going to just twist this around because I want the more solid part to be on the top. I don't want it to be separated. And then I'm taking 2 more white, and again I'm just going to slide these through here. Just try and get them in the middle. So I'm going to actually take this off for the moment because I'm going to make the finger part. So I know the actual M&Ms have fingers instead of just like a mitten type with a thumb, but this is easier to do. So I'm going to quadruple this first band. So I'm just twisting and putting it back on until I have 4 loops. And I'm taking my last single band here. Just going to slide this through, get the other end back on. So it's going to be our thumb. And so now I'm going to pick up this piece that I made initially, and I'm going to get this back on. So I'm just going to go through the 2 loops on the one side, and I'm going to take this and slide it through to connect that thumb piece. And I can see here this is almost trying to come off. Make sure that it doesn't come off the other side here. And then get the other 2 back on. So if you pinch that together here, you should see that this part at the top looks like where the main fingers would be, and then this part here is your thumb. So now it's just a matter of making the arm here. So 2 at a time, I'm just going to slide these through. And if you feel like you're getting hung up, if you pull down as you're pulling through, it does help. And you want to try and get these pretty evenly spaced. Try to get about the same amount on each side. Again, the next 2. And now 2 more. And then you should have 1 set left here. And you can do some adjusting if you feel like you need to. sort of like to pinch the sides here together. Try and make it more square than flat. So then I'm just going to take this off and put it to the side, and I'll make a second arm. So I'm not going to film this, but I will add the time to go back to if you want to follow along with these steps again. Now for the legs, what we're going to do is start with a magic ring of 4, so you'll need 5 bands. That's what I have in my first pile. And then we'll just do 3 rows with 4 in each. So you need a total of 17 bands of the white, and then you'll need 12 bands of the skin tone. So I'm tripling my first band, and I'm not going to use a twist tie this time. You certainly can if you want to. I'm just going to show it here without. So I'm taking my first band, pulling through, and then back through, so that's my second one. I'm going to pull through a third, and then one more time. So it is definitely going to be a very small magic ring, and honestly I think that it's a little bit harder to work with when it's so small. Just going to spread these out, and I am going to use a clip. I just think it's a little bit easier, especially since you're working in such a confined little space here. So I'm just going to go on to my first row here. So it is a longer stretch to go over to your next stitch, just so you're aware. Even though I tried to stretch these out, it is a little bit of a longer stretch. So this is my first row with 1 in each. So there's 1, 2, let me get that clip out of the way here. I like to use the clip just because it's so tiny. Sometimes they're stuck together and it's hard to see which one you're actually supposed to go under. So you know when you get to that 4th one, it should be where your clip is. So that was my first row out of the 3 that we're doing here. And if you feel like this is really closing in on you, what you can do is use your fingers and just sort of spread that apart. So you can see we went under this one, so I'm going over to the left here. I'm going to do my second row. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then here's my 4th one at the clip. Going to move that clip again, and then again I'm going to spread this out here. So I'm going over, here's my last row of white. I have 1, 2, get this clip out of the way. 3, and I'm actually going to just remove this clip. This is my 4th one. So you should have a nice little foot. It's pretty small. And what I'm going to do now is take my hook, and where this is through here, I'm going to go inside this stitch, and I'm going to push straight across and come out the other side. And now I'm going to be doing 3 at a time just to give the leg a little bit more stability. And it's a little harder to work with 3 because they want to slip off your hook, but try and get that nice and taut. If you hold it a little bit more tightly, it's going to help to stay on there. And then just carefully slide these through, everything on your hook, and then get the other end back on. Just make sure you're going through all 3. Taking my next 3, and again, if you hold this nice and tight, and if you pull down, it glides through a lot easier. And try and get that in the middle. So that was my second set. I'll do my third set here. This definitely takes a little practice. It may look a little bit easy when I'm showing it, but believe me, I do sometimes struggle with it too. And then I have one more set here. Try and even that out. And then your foot's going to look like this. So what you need to do is just rework this. Try and push this forward so it forms more of that L shape, so it comes straight up. And then the same thing with these bands. You want them to be straight up, and I like to squeeze the sides. Let me just take this off here. Just so you form that foot shape, foot and leg shape. So then pause your video, and again I'll add the time to go back to, and you want to make your second leg. Now I have all my pieces ready to go, so the last thing I need to do is to just stitch these all together. Now if you are using the rubber band eyes, you will have to attach these to the face before you get this all stitched together. So just find your placement, and then you want to tack those on the same way that we did the face. Use that similar concept. And use your nice and tight slip knots on the inside just so it doesn't come loose. So as I said earlier, I'm not adding my eyes until the very end. I have my Google eyes that I'm just going to hot glue on. So I'll start with the back piece here. You want to find where your stitch marker is. You're going to take that loose band, and I'm just going to go over to the next stitch in the direction that it would be going, in that counterclockwise direction. So I'm actually going to go through this stitch first because I want the loose band to sort of be sandwiched in the middle. So I'm going through this stitch, and then I'm going to pick up that loose band. And then you want to take your front section, and it really depends where you're adding the arms and legs. It depends on where you left that loose band. As I said, I left mine up here to the right towards the top. So I have to decide whether I want the arm to attach here or here. So I think this is a little high, and I'm not going to attach the arm on the first stitch, but I think maybe I'll do that on the second. So I'm going to go through this other loose band and then move down around here in a clockwise direction and go to that next stitch, and I'll take my red band and I'm going to pull through everything that's on my hook. So I'm going through the one stitch and then that loose band. That's from the front section, and then the other loose band and the next stitch from the back section. Get the other end back on, and one pulls through the other. So now we can remove our clips. Actually, my one clip had already fallen off, and then I'm going to just keep going around. Always going to go from the back side forward, and I'm going through each of the stitches. I'm going to line them up, always just going to that next one around. So as I said, you have to decide where you want the arms to be. I think I'm going to add the arms in this next stitch. So just go to this next one over, and now I'm going to take my arm and I'm going to go through 2 loops on the one side and then the 2 loops on the other, and then that next stitch over here on the front. So this time I'm having to pull through the 2 red stitches and then also these 4 tan in the center, and then I'm going to go through everything on my hook, so I have one more to slide through, back on, and one through the other. And then I'm going to my next stitch over. I'm going to move that arm up out of the way. So now it's just a matter of going through both sets of stitches here. Pull through everything. So we'll do a few until we get down around to the bottom, and then we'll have to see where we want to add the legs. So this part can be a little bit tricky. Let's see, I think I'll do one or two more here. Okay, let me see here. I think maybe one more, and then I'll add the leg. So now I have my two legs, and I want the toes to be facing outward. So when I add it on, I'm going to have my toe facing towards the right here. And this time I have 6 loops that I'm going to be going through. So make sure you're doing 3 on either side. So you just want to pull through everything. Go through all on your hook. And then I'm going to do 1 stitch in between the legs. And now I'm going to do my next leg. Again, I want this toe to be facing towards the left. Oops, it looks like it's facing towards the right, so let me just flip it. Go through this side first. Make sure you're going through all 6 loops. There, that looks better. Okay, now we're going to go up around, do a few more here before we add the other arm. So hopefully everybody is getting the hang of this and isn't struggling too badly with it. Let's see, I want to make this pretty symmetrical here. I think maybe one more, and then I'll add the arm. Let me see here. I think this is the right one. Hopefully I didn't just make it too high, but it's a little bit of trial and error. So again here, I'm going to try my best not to get hung up on anything. So let me just look here before I go any further if I think the arms are lined up. I think that looks pretty good. Just trying to decide if one is any higher than the other. So now it should be relatively smooth sailing here. We don't have any more limbs to add. The only thing we have to do is add the polyfil. I'm going to go around here a little ways first before I add that. I always like to wait to add that until as late as possible because the little pieces tend to get in between your stitches. It's very frustrating. So I think I will add the polyfill right now. So I like to add smaller sections at a time. And you want to stuff it pretty full, but not so full that it's showing in between your stitches. And also, with sewing these pieces together, what I like to do as I'm filling it is to sort of just even out these edges where it's sewn together. Sort of make sure that they're not caved in at all. This one's pretty easy to stuff because it's a nice round circle. Shouldn't be too many nooks and crannies to fill. I think I'll add just a little bit more here. I think that looks pretty good. And so now we just have to finish closing this off. Just trying not to get the little pieces of fuzz stuck in your stitches here. And hopefully your stitches on each side will line up. Every once in a while you might be off by one, which isn't really a big deal. It's not going to affect the overall look of it. So it looks like I have two left here. And let me just push this stuffing down. So here's my last one. And then you should have one band left that you're going to use to tie this off. So I can see it looks like there's a little hole right here, so I'm going to go and make sure that I attach this going over that hole. So you're taking your last band and pulling through everything and making a really nice and tight slip knot. And then what you're going to do is just hide that loose loop. So I like to go in several stitches away, and then I try to put my hook up against the top so as not to get any of the stuffing, and then just pull that through. I can see a little piece did come out here. It's inevitable that that happens. So then here's your little M&M, and of course he needs a little adjusting here. His arms and legs are a little wild, so you can twist and turn them however you like. If you want to angle his arms more downward. And then the same thing with the legs here. Angle his feet. And then of course the very last thing that I need to do is to hot glue on the eyes. So I'm not actually going to film the hot gluing part, but here's my eyes, and I'm just going to see where I want them to be, get the positioning down, and then I will glue them on and it will be complete. I hope that everyone loves their new little mini M&Ms. You can always leave me comments on YouTube and Facebook. Please feel free to share your pictures. I love to see everybody's creations. If you'd like, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, and then that way you'll get notified when I have a new tutorial ready. You can also find me on Pinterest and Instagram, so please feel free to subscribe to those as well. Thanks for watching!